Call the meeting to order and begin with the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
Just
need
the
to-
normal adoption of
okay.
the agenda today.
Okay, perfect. Is there any public comment on the closed session agenda? Okay, not seeing any. We'll adjourn to closed
We
session.
will need a motion, though, to adopt the agenda itself. There's just no change other than you're just adopting the
Oh,
agenda
gotcha, I
as is.
misunderstood you. Okay, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
This is John Vallejo, I'll second.
Chairman Peters,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades,
Aye.
Director St. Amand,
Yes.
Director Vallejo,
Aye.
Director Itnire.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So, jumped ahead there. We'll go back to public comment one more time. Anybody comment on closed session? Okay, seeing none, we'll adjourn to closed session. And we'll begin with a report on closed session.
Yes. Board met in closed session to discuss the items identified on the agenda. No reportable action took place. Mr. Chair, that concludes the report.
Thank you. Next, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And lastly, roll call.
Chairman Peters,
Here.
Vice Chair Blades,
Present.
Director St. Amand,
Present.
Director Itnire,
Here.
Director Vallejo.
Present.
Okay, thank you. This takes us to item number 6, and that is public comment. This time is reserved for the public to address the board about matters not on this agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anybody that would like to share comment with the board?
Judy Decker, excuse me. You unfortunately have caused yourself, I believe, a big credibility gap with the releasing prematurely of the news release regarding Searles Valley Minerals and the wastewater and the groundwater authority. This item is still on your website, or it was yesterday morning. And I don't know who's in charge, but somebody needs to be in charge of such things and be very careful about what you do, because as you well know, especially Michael McKinney, from attending the meetings on the 2 assembly bills, there is a contingent of this community, some of who think they are community leaders, who are totally, absolutely against the groundwater authority and do not think we have a water problem. So please, in the future, be a lot more careful.
Thank you, Judy. Any other public comment? Okay, not seeing any. We'll go to item number 7, and that is board member comments. Are there any comments from members of the board?
Nothing for me, sir.
Okay,
I do have one request. Member of the public has asked that our representatives from Inyo County and San Bernardino County have their cameras on during the proceedings. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, that takes us to item number 8, which is the consent agenda. And that includes items number 8A, 8B, 1 through 7. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion or motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Peters,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades,
Aye.
Director St. Amand,
Abstain.
Director Itnire,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is item number 9, which is a reimbursement agreement with the city of Ridgecrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just give you some introduction here. Back in November of 2020, the Groundwater Authority entered into an agreement with the city of Ridgecrest for an option agreement pertaining to sale of recycled water from the recycled water treatment facility for the excess water that might be available. That agreement provided for several things. In addition to the purchase of recycled water, it provided an opportunity for the city to recover its costs for legal services and other costs that it incurred for operation of the Groundwater Authority. Now, that option agreement is expiring. It had provisions to expire after 5 years or on other particular conditions. This happens to be the earliest of those conditions, and that's the 5 years. So the agreement expires next week. So we are bringing to you a new agreement, a reimbursement agreement between the Groundwater Authority and the city to allow the city to continue to be reimbursed for the costs that it incurs to provide legal services and other costs for the operation of the Groundwater Authority. So really, this is just a continuation of what we've been doing for the past 5 years, and it's just a mechanism to reimburse the city for legal costs for use of the city attorney. And happy to answer any questions, and if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yes, I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So the original option agreement, the reimbursement was in lieu of payment. Reimbursement for legal fees was in lieu of payment for the option, is that right?
It was a consideration for the option.
Could you
There-
please explain that in terms that I might understand better?
Let me grab the agreement, because the original option agreement itself, without the attachments, it's also in your packet, so I'm going to bring that up. So basically, the primary portion of the agreement was to provide the Groundwater Authority the opportunity to purchase any available recycled water from the city, from its treatment plant.
Okay.
The other considerations were the repayment of prior costs that the city had incurred, in addition to current and future costs, and those are costs such as those that we talked about, costs of reimbursement of their legal costs, to allow the city attorney to serve as counsel for the Groundwater Authority. And that's really all this new agreement is doing, is allowing us to continue that reimbursement.
So what is the advantage of the Groundwater Authority continuing to reimburse the city despite there not being a contractual obligation to do so?
Are you asking why would we reimburse the city for its costs to provide legal counsel?
Now that the option agreement, once the option agreement has expired, yes.
I mean, it seems pretty clear to me we'd reimburse them for the cost they're providing us because they're providing us a service that we're paying for now. Am I missing something?
That's exactly right.
And it would just be the expense of the legal expense.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
Nope. Is this a vote that the city can vote on, or is there a conflict of interest involved with this?
Mr. Lemieux?
So the income you receive from a public entity, so conflict of interest is when it impacts your financial interests. The money that you receive as a stipend from your respective public entity is not considered a financial interest for purposes of voting on things, because there's any number of things that involve the interests of the district or the city, for example, and that business must take place. So, no, the directors do not have a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. So you are the Groundwater Authority's legal representation, is that correct, Mr. Lemieux?
There we go. Yes.
And are you also the city's attorney, Mr. Lemieux?
My firm is city attorney, yes.
So your firm is the city attorney. And who negotiated this, this addition?
On behalf of, so Paul Early from my office proposed the language on behalf of the city, and I reviewed it on behalf of the GA.
So two members of your organization negotiated this and agreed to it.
We did not agree to it. It's the GA that needs to agree to it.
You want me to rephrase that? Two members of your legal firm acted as negotiating parties for both the interested parties, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sandoval, this is John Blejo. Do you see any substantive issues with the proposal in front of the board today? Because it's up to us to agree to it or to call out any issues you see with regard to us receiving legal services from the city, as we have been for years now,
Understood.
and the cost for that. So if there's a substantive issue, I'd love to hear it.
I have heard from our attorney that there could be an issue involved in this. Jim, is there any issue that you can see? Are you on, Jim Worth?
So you're not saying from your perspective at this point that you see a substantive issue with the agreement in front of us? That's what I'm asking. Do you have an actual concern with the agreement that's in front of us in terms of us reimbursing the cost of the legal services that the city's offering? If so, let's talk about it.
I cannot, I don't have an answer for you on that one. If it's just paying back the legal expenses, that's one thing.
Can I didn't add something that I think is important. When you asked me the question before about our firm doing work on behalf of the city and the groundwater authority, I think it's important for me to point out that before I was able to start performing work for the groundwater authority, I was required to get a conflict of interest waiver from both the groundwater authority and the city and the other parties. So everybody has waived that particular conflict if there is a conflict.
Yeah,
So just for clarity, and that was true, of course, for county and for the water district as well.
I would note, this is John Vallejo, for Inyo County and our JPAs, including our groundwater authority, this is a very common scenario where one of the agencies provides legal counsel through its counsel to the Joint Powers Authority. I don't see any issues with this. So unless there's any other comments, I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Vallejo. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
No, this seems like standard.
Yeah.
We're moving forward what we had before.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask the public if there's any comment on this.
I just want to know, is the issue about the reimbursement to the city, or is it just conflict of interest?
Oh, is that question directed to me?
Well, whoever wants to answer it.
Yeah, this item in particular is about reimbursing the city of Ridgecrest for legal services.
Okay, because I remember probably a year or two ago, Phil Hall explained that the taxpayers that live within Ridgecrest city limits were ending up paying 3 legal fees instead of 2, and that this reimbursement to the city for legal services had to do with that. I don't know if you remember that or not.
No, I don't have an answer for that off the top of my head.
He might have also, there's also, with regard to the groundwater adjudication, because the county, the city, and the water district are all parties to, and the groundwater authority, so all 4 entities are parties to that, he might have been referring to the fact that those attorney's fees are being paid for sort of out of different buckets, and I'm not sure what the analysis was in that context, but that may have been what the context was. Not necessarily fees related to general counsel work for the GA itself. So so just for clarity, the GA has got outside counsel for defending the groundwater adjudication and the other lawsuits. This doesn't apply to that. This applies to work I'm doing here today, attending the meetings and reviewing agreements and so forth.
I still think it had to do with the city's reimbursement? Because somehow the people that live within Ridgecrest city limits, their tax dollars end up paying 3 times, is what he was saying.
Well, it's true that they would pay fees to the water district for water service, taxes that go to the county, and taxes and sales tax that go to the city, but I don't know in terms of
Legal fees?
how that winds its way through to particular payment. I'd have to ask him.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
originally, the joint powers agreement said that the participants would all cover, they have signed an in-kind agreement for covering legal expenses, that they would each cover their own legal expenses. So that's fundamentally why I'm asking these questions. Is this an extension of that consideration for the city of Ridgecrest because we signed an option for access to the recycled water, or is this just a, specifically and strictly to cover the expenses of the city attorney as when they represent the groundwater authority?
Well, I think it seems that now, because we're not in a rotation, it places a much greater burden on the city for it to have to carry all of the regular legal costs. So it seems fair to reimburse the city for those costs.
Well, I think the question, is, what are we reimbursing for? And it's right there in the agreement. Again, this agreement in the packet was belatedly provided to us in terms of being able to prepare for this. So I understand the question being presented. But if we look at the reimbursement agreement that's in front of us to take action on it, it answers your question. Number 2, the city agrees to allow the authority to utilize the city attorney's offices to assist with the provision of legal services, etc. And number 3, the authority agrees to reimburse them for those costs. That's what is in front of us today.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Or, excuse me, from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board for questions, comments, or motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agreement as presented.
Thank you, Director Vallejo. Is there a second? I'll second it.
Chairman Peters,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades,
Aye.
Director St. Amand,
Abstain.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is item number 10, amendment to agreement with Capital Core Group.
Mr. Chairman, I will briefly introduce this, and I think Michael McKinney is on to add to it. But as you know, we have an agreement with Capital Core Group to provide various services, including legislative advocacy. And each year when we consider that contract, there's a budget and not to exceed amount that goes with it. We are nearing the cap on that not to exceed for 2025. And so there's a request to increase the cap by $20,000. It would bring it from the contract from approximately $222,000 to about $242,000 for the year. And the increase is due primarily to the activity with legislation throughout the year. And as some of you well know, there was a great deal of effort put into working those pieces of legislation. Michael, I don't know if you want to add anything to this, but our recommendation is to consider increasing the not to exceed cap by $20,000 so that we cover their costs through the end of the year.
Thank you, Carol. You presented it exactly correctly. It does not mean that we would use this entire amount. This is simply to get us through and have a buffer zone into it to ensure that we don't go over the not to exceed and have to bring a budget item back in the last month, essentially. And I'll answer any questions from there.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, are there any questions or comments from the board?
No questions, just a quick comment. I appreciate all your work, Mike. The Capital Corps has done a great job of working for the Groundwater Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Okay, any questions or comments from the public?
Yes, Renee West-Lusk, I live within Ridgecrest city limits. I just have a question for Carol, the general manager. How does this increase plus another increase for Provost and Pritchard, I believe, that's coming up on the agenda, affect the budget? Is there money there to cover these, because you presented the budget at the last meeting? And I'm just curious about where these increases are covered by the budget. Is there some extra money to help pay for those?
Oh, it's a great question, Renee, thank you. And yes, I mean, the budget we looked at was for next year, and this goes into this year's costs. There is, for what we're looking at for the capital core increase, it's not a large amount, and we can definitely accommodate that without an issue. The upcoming item, I think, will probably have a little bit more discussion to it.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Not seeing any. Okay, I will bring it back to the board for any final discussion or a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second it.
Chairman Peters,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades,
Aye.
Director Santamond,
Abstain.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to our next item, which is item number 11, and that's the approval of fiscal year 2027 congressionally directed spending request, water replenishment pipeline.
We're going to turn this over to Capital Core Group and show you what they've been putting some of their effort to. Michael?
Good morning, members of the board. Yes, in our 2026 work plan, or our 2025 work plan, excuse me, the board had agreed to have us look for a fiscal year 2026 project start for the water replenishment pipeline and seek an earmark in the amount of $5 million. It was determined that planning activity would take us into fiscal year 2027, and there was a possibility that we would not complete work during fiscal year 2026 on the planning side and allow for a construction start. This simply moves that action that the board already approved into fiscal year 2027. And pursuant to doing a project initiation or a project start at U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, this would request a $5 million earmark through the Energy and Water Development Act, which would be the first $5 million against the $50 million authorization. That would have to be spent during fiscal year 2027. And it would allow Army Corps to begin to start. We suggest a project budget or a project initiation. It would be subject to whatever discretionary authority that the Army Corps has. They could do whatever they wanted with the $5 million, but that is what we are suggesting with it. And due to the Senate deadlines, we are recommending approval of the packet and submittal of the packet during the appropriate time when the senators request a earmark for fiscal 27. And from there, I'll answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKinney. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I do have some questions.
Okay, Director Santamond.
So we've got, in here, I see under authorization that the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority is the non-federal sponsor of the project. Has this board voted to accept the role of non-federal sponsor at an open session? And if not, and if so, when?
Yes, you did during the approval of the letter of intent, which I do not remember the exact date, of the approval of the letter of intent to be sent, but it was sometime earlier in this particular calendar year that indicated that the Groundwater Authority would be the non-federal sponsor and would be responsible for the non-federal share costs.
Okay. So have you, since they're each $50 million chunk of WRDA fund comes with a $12.5 million matching funds, what is the plan to cover the costs for the matching funds?
Those can be covered through any non-federal, so it could be covered through the state, either through earmarks through the state or through Proposition 4 funding, or would be covered by the local agency itself.
Okay, so no plan has been, their options have been determined, but no plan has yet been determined to cover the
No plan has
$36
been
million
approved by the
plus.
board at this moment.
Okay.
No, a plan has been approved by the board. They have all been submitted to the board at various times for your consideration.
Is a JPA allowed to be a non-federal sponsor of the project? Or does it
Yes.
have to be an organization with directly elected officials?
It has directly elected officials through the Joint Powers Authority, and pursuant to the state of California, is considered to be a political subdivision of the state. It is an eligible entity, and the Army Corps of Engineers has already accepted that.
Okay. And I'll bring this up just as a statement. It's not a question. Under project description, it says the pipeline will end at a newly welded steel terminus tank at the Water District's Ridgecrest Heights Tanks facility. There has been no agreement reached between the Groundwater Authority and the Water District for the water to be directly added to the Water District's water distribution system. So that is just a statement. It's not a question.
I can address that statement. Again, this is a suggested project description. It is not a project description that is necessarily to be approved by U.S. Army Corps. And one of the suggestions that we may determine with U.S. Army Corps is to remove those tanks from Water District property, put them onto city or BLM property, and move it from there.
Okay, thank you,
I have
Mr.
nothing else.
McKinney. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to public comment.
I just have a question on the matching fund, the 1.25 million. Does that end up going into the 2027 budget for the IWVGA?
At some point, yes, it will have to. Whether we offset that fund with state funding through Proposition 4, DWR, or through some other means has yet to be determined. We have an entire year to figure that out and work towards that. That is on our 2026, our 2026 work plan.
And then I have another question. I think I missed your statement about the balance of the first tranche of $50 million. When would that end up coming to the GA?
So a funding mechanism through U.S. Army Corps has not been fully discussed. The shutdown actually precluded some of the discussions that we would like to have had up until now. But there have been preliminary discussions about how this would move into a programmatic budget, meaning that it would be part of the U.S. Army Corps' annual request through the president's budget, or whether or not we have to do a secondary earmark request. We know that it is not palatable or possible to do an earmark for $50 million at any given time. So I think our discussions initially are how do we move this into a programmatic section and then plus it up in WRDA 28.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to the board for any further discussion or a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Chairman Peters,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades,
Aye.
Director St. Amand,
No.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is number 12, and that's Blue Mountain Development Project Management Progress Update.
I believe we have a report from our recently hired project manager, Omar Dandashi from Blue Mountain. And Omar, are you on the line?
Hi, yeah, Carol.
Very good. Well,
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
go ahead.
Happy to walk through this.
Great,
Thank
thank you.
So as the board has brought me on board to start looking through this program, I've been reviewing with Provost and Pritchard and Trans Systems currently where they are in their progress. This report is meant to give an overview, and it will be provided on a monthly basis for the board to take a look at. So starting with kind of the overall program, the first targeted item, which will be done between this month and next month, is developing an integrated master schedule for the project. The intent behind this is really to compile where we are to date and to look for elements that could impact the schedule overall. So it would include the environmental components as well as the technical design, the right-of-way acquisition. We would also look at how we might do construction phasing in conjunction with the funding that Capital Corps would be looking for, and how do we tie project components with the Army Corps. So with that in mind, we're also looking at how we're integrating all the document systems that we have. So that means the design files, technical documents that are being developed, as well as some of the programmatic components as well. And I've noted on here the focus areas of evaluation. These are intended to look at key areas that would cause potential issues on the project or delays, or components that just need resolution from a technical point of view. So we are now setting up monthly meetings to go through with the entire project team. These are the project development team meetings. And then we're going to focus on each of the components that we have. So they've broken them down in the report before you. The environmental planning was the first one. The only reason that is sitting first is because it does have a lead issue that we want to try to get to on timing. And that's also going to focus very heavily on how we handle some of the technical things. So I just want the board to be aware that we are looking at this as an iterative process. And I'll give you an illustration of that. So as we develop more of our detailed work with BLM as well as SCE, we may find that there will be components that come back to the environmental documents, such as key biological surveys. These will impact the overall project schedule, so they would be reviewed in conjunction with that. Part two to this is making sure that we're getting a full document that's being issued out that covers all the elements that might be of review from essentially as a complete document. So that'll be probably our first item that we want to bring back as kind of a completed item as part of this planning. The design development, which is the next one down, currently we're having Provost and Pritchard work on a 90% design. However, there are components of that that do require some review just to make sure that we can handle those before the 90% can be completed. These are being driven in part, and I would say primarily, by BLM and the requirements for the pod, as well as looking at SCE for powering up our lift stations. So with that in mind, we're going to look at the scour crossings, the interconnection between the beginning and ends of the sites, and of course the design elements in between. Construction phasing is a big piece of how we're going to look at this as well. So the reason this is a key component, as we've heard prior with Capital Corps, the initial amount of funds that will be available or being sought is about $5 million, and that's going to cover a fairly small portion of the overall project costs. So looking at how we can find components that can be fit into a phase system with the Army Corps is going to be key to our work in the design development itself. So the two components that are noted there that I think the board is aware of is the BLM planning and the SCE planning. So these two have had impacts overall on what we're doing, and they are kind of our focal point. So the overall game plan is to come back and provide this integrated master schedule with a plan to advance the project and complete it by next year. And this is all tied in the conjunction with the funding being requested. The last item on our list here is not by any means the least item, is the right-of-way acquisition. And we've done a brief overview with Trans Systems on the number of properties that are going to be required or easements that are going to be required. We are looking at those in conjunction with how the construction phasing is going to occur. So the key part to this one is to understand how we can use funding to acquire key pieces of property as necessary for the work or as necessary for upcoming work. So this is going to be kind of the strategic part of the property attainment process that we're going through. So this is a brief overview. I'll be happy to provide respond to any questions that the board may have, and certainly can provide more detail as we're digging into this updated plan that we're intending to have done before the end of the year. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask if there are any public comment on the floor. Okay, not seeing any. Since it's just a progress update, we don't need a vote, do we? Okay, perfect. Okay, that takes us to item number 13, which is Provost and Pritchard change orders for the imported pipeline project.
So, Mr. Chairman, we'll ask Stetson to just briefly introduce this, and then we'll have the folks from Provost and Pritchard speak.
Actually, I think it's going to be Omar.
Oh, Omar, okay, very good.
Yeah, Omar. Omar reviewed these with Stetson. But.
That is correct. Thanks, Steve. So I appreciate your covering the next item. As covered in the prior item, the issues that we run into with 90% design finishing are relating primarily to the two components, the BLM work that's ongoing, and as well as the SCE component. So as Provost and Pritchard has maintained the level of effort with these two items in an effort to move forward with the 90%, these two change orders are coming in with the requests, one for the environmental and one for the design services. So the review that I performed with Provost and Pritchard relates to the work that was done from a time frame going from essentially April through October, so essentially the last month. And then there's a component that goes into the next stage, which is the planning that we need to do to get the project into a completed stage by the end of next year. So that second part to it is the time and effort that we're requesting to have work with the team on both sides, and it also does include some work with Trans Systems as well. So these two change orders that are coming through that I'll let more detail for Provost and Pritchard to cover have been requested and reviewed from my side. The time that was spent between the April to October timeframe to make sure that we keep moving ahead with the items being requested by BLM and CE. Those two have been reviewed against current budgets, and there is a transfer of budgets moving around to try to minimize the cost presented here in front of the board for consideration. So I'd like to, if you don't mind, the board to take a look at it from basically a three-pronged perspective, and the more of the detail will come in through the review being provided through Provost and Pritchard. First part is the work that was performed under existing budgets and moving some items around, particularly on design. The second part is the November and December timeframe to move into a new and set up approach to get the project completed. And then at a future time, which will be in January, we will come back and provide a new update overall with budgets as changes do occur from that plan itself. So this portion that's being presented today covers the first two items. I'm happy to answer any questions on that and then turn it over to Provost and Pritchard for their update.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Provost Pritchard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Jeff Davis, representing Provo and Pritchard this morning. Specifically on the engineering, we do have people who can speak to the environmental after, if you like. I want to just talk briefly. We've got a number of tables in your board package. I'm happy to go over those tables with you in as much detail as you want me to. We wanted to be as transparent as possible, so we threw a bunch of numbers at you, and I will go over it. There's some summary tables and there's some detailed ones. But I wanted to start by just to give you some context by giving you a short timeline and the triggering event that really brought us to where we are today for these change orders. We've all been through the story of the BLM and their DRECP, Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, and all the extra work that we had to do for that just for our geotechnical work. So we got our geotechnical work about a year after we had originally intended to, which is not ideal because you want to get that before you start your design. We actually had done a 30% design before we got the geotechnical work. We got the geotechnical work last summer, summer of 2024, so that July, August timeframe of 2024. We immediately turned that geotechnical data over to our scour subconsultant, Stantec, because scour is a very important issue related to this project, and Omar briefly mentioned the scour. We all are aware that Red Rock-Randsburg Road washes out at least once a year, at least in the 4 years that I've been involved in this project. The reason that road washes out is because of scour. You have a number of dry creek beds that come down from the El Paso Mountains on the south side there, and they create a lot of scour, and they scour out things and wash things away, including the road. Well, if they can wash away a road, they can wash away a pipeline buried under the road as well. So that's obviously a very big concern of ours. So in October of 2024, just about a year ago, we got the first results of some computer modeling that our scour subconsultant did. And getting that data from the scour subconsultant, Stantec, is essentially the triggering event that brought us to where we are today. Because what the scour model results said essentially was, well, this pipeline is likely to get washed away unless you do some very severe things with it, like bury it 15 feet deep under the road. Well, that was, again, that would have been better to get before the 30% design, but we did not get it until after we'd already submitted that, and we're well on our way in the design process. So we immediately looked at that and said, well, we're not sure that that's going to work, primarily because of the additional cost that it would mean to the authority, right? Burying something 15 feet deep when you're right under a road means you can't have a big open pit. You have to shore everything, and the expense of that would be just literally, I think, too much to bear. So we started immediately thinking, okay, well, what can we do here? We have this data. We need to do something. We don't think that the recommendation here is going to work financially for the authority. Let's start thinking of other options. And so we put our minds to thinking. We immediately started talking with your staff. And we realized very shortly thereafter it's unlikely that we were going to meet the deadline of the 100% design, which at the time was March of this past year. March 31st of 2025 was originally the date when all design was supposed to be completed. But with this new data on the scour, we immediately went to your staff and said, we just don't think that this is possible to do. And in fact, it's really not. So we started talking with them about how we could deal with that and what different things that we could do. It's obviously not what we call a lifeline facility. That is, you're building this pipeline to balance out your groundwater basin. So if for whatever reason the pipeline were to wash out any given year, you could repair it. You don't have to be putting water through it 365 days a year. We designed the pipeline so that you could get all the water through, even at the ultimate design phase in the 2070s time range, in about 10 months a year. So you could have the pipeline wash out. Now, you would obviously have to repair it, just like they have to repair the road every year, but, you know. So how does that all fit into the design? How do we fit all that in? So these discussions continued, and we said to your staff, we can't finish the project by March, and they agreed. So they came to you in February of this year, and in February, you agreed to an extension of the project. I think the project is extended through March of 2026, and I think our contract was extended through December of this year. So, so that gave us some relief as far as, wow, okay, now we don't have to solve this problem immediately. We have some time to figure it out. But it brought some other issues to our attention, which is basically we still have to manage the project. Now we're managing the project. Instead of managing it through March of 2025, we're now managing it through December. And we're also coordinating with all the stakeholders during that period of time. And so we then came to your staff shortly after your board extended the project and said, well, we think that we're going to need some additional dollars primarily for project management and coordination with stakeholders, not for design. At that point in time, there were no design issues. The design was going to be the same. We just had to figure all this stuff out. And so your staff looked at that and said, well, we're not sure that we're prepared to do that. We need to talk about it some more. So we continued talking about it for a number of months. During that time, even though this was obviously beyond our scope, we were past March 31st, which was the end of our original contract, and we weren't supposed to be managing the project. We continued moving the project forward in a good faith effort to make progress. And during this time, some additional design features did come to the fore, and we brought those to you in August, and you did approve a small change order in August for some small design issues related to corrosion of some tanks that we had originally not thought would be necessary. and also for some additional trenchless crossings. We've continued talking about the project management and coordination issues, and that's what brought us here today in November of 2025. So I'm happy to say that we're not asking for any money for coordination with the Bureau of Land Management. We still have money in that budget. What has been an issue for us is working with Southern California Edison. We have been working with them, having bi-weekly meetings with Southern California Edison for close to 2 years now, and it's a kind of a brutal process with that company. We knew them when we submitted our proposal. We kind of knew what it was like working with Edison, and we put a lot of hours in to do all this. And they exceeded our expectations as far as the amount of work required to work with them. The biggest issue here is that the individual that we had been working with for a long period of time and who had sort of set the design to bring the power to the pump stations was dismissed by Edison. And they brought in a new person who had a completely different idea of what needed to be done. So in a sense, we had to start all over with them. And so that was obviously a very big issue, and that's a big chunk of what we're asking for today. The other thing on project management issues, managing the project, when you submit your proposal for a project like this, you look at it's a big project, you're managing budget and schedule, got all these sub-consultants, and you put in a number of hours per month. Okay, we can do this in X number of hours per month. And so every month that goes by, you're spending more hours. April through October, obviously, was 7 additional months. During that time, we were working closely with your staff, and obviously your staff is working to get more funding for the project, and so frequently your staff came back to us and said, okay, we're working on this other potential financing option, grant option. Can you please do this for us? And so they asked us to slice and dice our numbers a number of different ways, and we had to go back, for example, how many dollars are you going to spend every month on this project for the next, whatever, year, 8 months, 9 months, whatever. And then can you look at this and look at this? So we were continually working with your staff during this time to manage the project, looking at different ways to finance it. And we were basically trying to figure out what the cost would be on a monthly basis or how the cost could be changed, that sort of thing. So there were a lot of dollars expended from management in that perspective. The other things, like I said, the coordination with Edison was the big thing. Another thing that's been a big deal for us is we have to connect into AVEC's system. I think we all know that. AVEC has said, well, our system is going to be tapped out at some point in time and there's not going to be any more capacity in our system. So we've had to go back to AVEC and ask them to bring in their own consultant to do some additional modeling of their system going out to 2070. We literally cannot finish the design of our project until that modeling is done because we don't know what Pump Station 1 in particular is going to look like until we figure out what AVEC is going to tell us about their system with this modeling. So a lot of coordination with AVEC, a lot of coordination with Southern California Edison, and then a lot of work on, as Omar mentioned, the POD, or the plan of design for the big project. We did a plan of design for the geotechnical borings, but at the very beginning of this project, we broke the project into 2 from the perspective of the BLM. One is just for the geotechnical borings, and one is the project as a whole. We did our POD for the geotechnical borings. Now we're doing our POD, or plan of design, for the project as a whole, and that is all about access. How are you going to access each individual place along the pipeline, and a lot of extra work that, frankly, was not in our original scope. So the extra project management, the extra coordination work that we've performed from April through October primarily deals with dealing with your staff and trying to find different funding mechanisms and managing the project, and coordinating with Edison and coordinating with AVEC and working on the POD. Omar mentioned previously that we have rearranged our own budget to help reduce the amount that we're asking for. Not every task that we have is over budget. We had a number of tasks that we completed under budget. And we looked at that, and there's about $55,000 in tasks that we had completed that we were under budget. So we took that $55,000 and moved it over to offset what we're asking for. So that's where those tables come in. There's a table in there that shows that the actual work and project management and coordination from, and again, it's almost exclusively coordination with Edison, from April through October was about $125,000, but we're moving $55,000 of other task money in there. So the ask there is about $70,344, I think it is. And then Omar mentioned the projected work in November and December. We're continuing doing the same thing, managing the project. We're working with Edison. And again, that's broken down. I think that's a total of 39,000, 32,000 for project management, about 7,000 working with Edison. So the 70,000 plus the 39,000 is about $109,000. 70,000 of it is for work that's already been done in April through October. 39,000 is work projected for November and December. And as Omar mentioned, we're going to get our act together and come back in January and give you a progress report on where we are and see if there's additional funds that will be needed at that time. But that's sort of the overall picture. Would you like me to go through any of those tables with you to kind of show you the detail, or?
Yeah, I actually, so I know there was change order request recently, I think in August.
Correct.
So, I mean, this latest one is from April through November. How come these weren't addressed then?
Right, so that's a good question. The change order in August was strictly for technical design issues. This is for project management and coordination, right? So, as I mentioned, when we found out about the scour, we weren't asking for the design appeared to be the same. We didn't need to need any more money for design, we just needed for the project management and the coordination. However, during the course of this, a couple of things happened. As we finalized the hydraulics, and as I mentioned, we have not completely 100% finalized the hydraulics yet, but what we have determined is that through working with AVEC is that the 4-bay tanks at the pump stations will not be able to be underground concrete wet wells as we originally intended. They're going to have to be a lot larger than that. Just that's how the hydraulics worked out. So that you can't put all that underground, so you have to put tanks on top of the ground, which means you need to do some corrosion design for that. So that's a completely separate issue, the corrosion design for those tanks. The second issue was, in our original proposal, we assumed there would be some number of trenchless crossings. I can't remember, there was a large number of trenchless crossings. But again, as the hydraulics became clearer and we talked more with Kern County Transportation Department, it became clear that we would have to do a few more trenchless crossings. So the length of the pipeline stays the same, but some portions of it that were going to be in a trench will now be done in a different methodology, different trenching, a trench-less method, which is additional work for one of our sub-consultants. So we needed some additional work for this. So those were strictly for design, had nothing to do with the project management and coordination, which we're asking for now.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, real quick, sir, Kyle Blades. You, it seems like you stated that a lot of the reason for your schedule slippage was SCE, BLM. Is that going to continue to be an issue? I mean, do you see having to come back again?
So what we're asking, that's a really good question. I've worked with these guys for a lot of years. You can tell by the number of gray hairs on my head. And so I would never state anything with 100% certainty with these guys. But we're asking for funds through December. And we're going to be working with Omar and your staff during those 2 months, November and December, to figure out what's ahead. And I think there will be some additional coordination, for example, with now that the Corps of Engineers is involved. I think we're going to have to be doing some coordination with the Corps of Engineers that we had not counted on. So I think there will be some additional, whether there will be additional for BLM or SCE or not, I would hope not, but we'll know a lot more in January.
Right, nobody has a crystal ball. And if I may, maybe over to you, Carol. So is this, has Provost and Pritchard been very good about communicating with you all of these slips and what's going on?
Yes, and Stetson Engineers works most closely with them, although we did bring on our project manager, Omar Dandashi, and so they have been having a lot of conversations, but we've been aware of these issues as they go. We participate in a lot of the meetings with Provost and Pritchard, with Edison, with BLM, so we're aware of the issues as they go along.
Is there any help that you could be provided?
I think bringing in Omar has been a really big help because he is able to focus more. I think we've been working with the Stetson Engineers, but Omar is looking at it from a higher level and trying to coordinate the work that we're doing and our environmental people and the right-of-way people, as I mentioned. And that has actually helped quite a bit to focus us on a clear, focused path forward. So I think that's actually been a big step forward.
Okay.
Well,
Kudos for that.
Yeah, sure.
And this is Steve, real quick. Jeff, I agree with you. The other thing I think Omar brings is a really much more experience than we really, Stetson really has when dealing with BLM and Edison issues like that. So that's been very helpful too.
I think a 50-mile-long linear project in California going through federal lands where you have all kinds of critical habitat for endangered species is a really tough project. and you're going over mountain ranges and through dry stream beds, there's just a lot. There's just a lot to take in.
It is a Herculean task.
It's a big one. Perhaps Sisyphean as well.
Yeah, maybe more accurate.
Yikes.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No.
I'll go to public comment now.
Yeah, Renee Westelusk, I live within Ridgecrest city limits. I just have another budget question. I assume this will be absorbed in the current year's budget, these extended payments or whatever you call them to Provost and Pritchard?
Yes, this is part of the current year's budget and will, to the extent possible, be covered by grants.
Okay,
Hi.
thank you.
Yes, this is Bianca at Stetson Engineers. I can add to that as well. So in drafting the 2026 budget for the authority, we had assumed that this pending change order amount would be absorbed in the 2025 budget through funding by the EPA resiliency grant. You may have seen in the Water Resources Manager's report that the authority has received the agreement for the EPA resiliency grant, and staff has provided their notice of the acceptance of the agreement. And now we're just completing the grant training and enrollment in the payment system. So these change orders will be absorbed in the current 2025 budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the board, and I'm just going to say personally that I actually do have some issues with this. I've got a lot of questions, and I probably keep us here all afternoon with how many questions I've got, probably more than would be appropriate in this meeting. So I'm actually going to make a motion that we table this until our next meeting, and I've had a chance to research this a little bit more, maybe to meet with some of the stakeholders, get some more information from staff, and we bring this back at our next board meeting.
This is John Vallejo. I completely understand the concern with regard to cost control and at what point do we have a scope of work that's got a cost to it and that continues to change and they just come back after the fact. It's a good question and how we deal with that. Similar to the prior agenda item, we had to amend the contracted cost as well for our lobbying efforts. So I'm on board with that if that's the will of the board.
Good. Thank you, Director. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll make that a motion. Is that a second, Director Vallejo?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm, with Keith, if we are tabling an item, do we necessarily need a motion, or is it just tabled until December?
Well, tabling it is, I guess, is an instruction to bring it back, so we would need direction from the board to bring it back. So I think it's appropriate to do it as a motion.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll make a motion that we continue this to our December board meeting.
I will second that motion.
Chairman Peters?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades?
Aye.
Director Sadamond?
Yes.
Director Etnier?
Aye.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item will be moved to the December agenda.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is agenda item number 14, and that's the fouling program and dust control mitigation program.
Yes, this is Stetson. Bianca will review, there is a staff report, staff memo in your packet, and Bianca's going to walk through it. As the board will recall, we had some questions about the fallowing program as far as how it relates to the GSP and to our implementation plan in the Wells Valley. So in response to those questions, we thought it would be appropriate to have a summary of the fallowing program, including board actions and where we are now, funding issues, those kinds of things. So Bianca will walk through it.
Hi all, this is Bianca again. So I'll go ahead and go through the background. So in 2020, board had authorized Resolution 5-20, which established the transient pool and fouling program. It provided options for qualified pumpers to 1, reject allotment from the transient pool and pay the replenishment fee. 2, to accept the allotment and the associated mitigation fee. Or 3, to accept the allotment and negotiate a sale with the authority through the fouling program. Offers to the authority through the fouling program were due to the authority by October 1st, 2020, but due to lack of funding and support of the program from the water district, pumpers and the authority could not adhere to the schedule. In 2022, the authority proposed to the water district to use replenishment fee funds to purchase transient pool allotments, and the benefit would be to extend the amount of time where imported water is needed. The water district responded that they believed it would be a misuse of the replenishment fee. Additionally, the fouling program may need to be on hold while the authority goes through the ongoing adjudication. Alternatively, the authority could consider the GSP's dust control mitigation program once transient pool producers use the remainder of their allocations. Through this dust control mitigation program, the plan can be to draft a plan to reduce windblown dust from decreased agricultural use and to investigate restoration of natural habitat on the fallowed land. There's 3 potential candidates that will use up their allocations soon. This is Quist Farms, Meadowbrook Dairy, and Trees Farms. Staff has reviewed potential funding sources, including the source that Judy Decker had recommended at our last meeting, which is the California Department of Conservation's Multi-Benefit Land Repurposing Program. Unfortunately, there is no current announcements for additional rounds of funding, but the Department of Conservation did state they are exploring future opportunities. So just to conclude, with no readily available source of funding and no specific offers to sell from transient pool members, the fallowing program has been set aside. Staff recommends the board provide direction on whether to contact the transient pool members to determine interest in implementing dust control measures if funding were available, and if there is interest to pursue funding for the dust control mitigation program. If there's any questions, I can address those. Thank you.
This is Steve. Thank you, Bianca. That was good. I just want to mention one quick thing, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Peters, if I can. As you all know, Capital Corps has been doing an amazing job for the Groundwater Authority. They've been very, very effective in everything that they've done. And they took the lead on looking for funding for fallowing programs years ago and have made several runs at funding. One of the issues is you need to have a project, which we really don't have. We have some potential ideas, but we don't have a project to apply for. But I will say that Capital Corps has been very, very involved and effective on keeping track of where funding might be available, along with the information we've gotten from Judy Decker. So I just want to add that. But if anybody has any questions with Bianca's report, certainly we'd be happy to answer if we can.
Yeah, so there was no interest from anyone in the valley to fallow their property?
We haven't solicited input for that, but the most likely place where this would occur, as Bianca mentioned, and it's in the staff report, would be through the transient pool. These are folks that currently have ag programs or had ag programs. They were allocated certain amounts of water to continue their ag program as they phase out their agricultural program, where it would likely make sense that if they're going to phase out their ag, they may need to look at dust control measures, as Bianca mentioned. So that's as far as we've gone. We have not done a solicitation. We don't have funding for a solicitation to do something, even if somebody were interested.
So no preliminary market study was done with the farmers to see if there was even any interest in having their property fallowed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Other than discussions at this board where we know hopefully we get pretty wide information out to the public.
I mean, and to Mr. Saint Amon's comment there, I mean, we did have extensive conversations during the development and ultimate vote on the GSP about this being part of our GSP as a project. So there has been quite a bit of conversation and outreach with regard to this topic as part of the GSP as a whole. So it's not like this is a brand new secret thing or surprising thing that's come up. It's been on the table for quite some time.
Correct. Thank you, Dr. Vallejo.
And
Correct.
there was
Mr. Chairman, Michael McKinney, if I may, for a quick second. This continues to be part of the GSP and is covered in our work plan on an annual basis. It will appear again in our 2026 work plan. There are two items that need to be addressed. And that is, first of all, if there has to be a valid project that we can attach to and apply for funding for. And second of all, there has to be measures beyond dust control. It cannot merely be a dust control project to be eligible for state funding. The other thing I will bring up is in the last 2 years, the state zeroed the program out. So is there additional money for land repurposing? Yes, there will be. However, in the last 2 fiscal years, there would have not been any state funds available for that. So we would need a project, it would need to go beyond dust control, and then we would need to go find funding for it.
So this isn't a surprise to me. I was aware of the following program. What I'm taking exception to is the additional, context for the resolution, which seems to attempt to pin the failure of the following program on the water district. I won't address that. It doesn't need to be addressed. It seems as if, though, there are a number of items that are equally, if not more important, to the following program's failure than just the water district. So that is why I asked those questions. I'm surprised the state's I understand the state has zeroed out their fallowing monies, but it's interesting to note that the state had published a plan to fallow up to 60% of the farmland in the San Joaquin Valley. And I don't know whether they're still pursuing that or not, but I would have imagined they at least kept that funding in the coffers. Thank you.
Director Santamond, you are correct. That was in the state water project that the governor, or state water plan, excuse me, that the governor had released. That was a large part of SIGMA implementation that they were going to work for. However, due to the state's financial constraints, that was one of the areas that they chose to cut back on severely and ended up zeroing it out. The theory is that they have punted that authorization to future years and extended the program, but without a physical appropriation of money, there was nothing that we could do to go after it. And because we did not have a specific project to tie it to, it wasn't a huge priority item. It will continue to be something we look at and give more priority to as projects are identified. And then we can go look and ask the state to reinstate some of that funding.
Yes, I understand, Mr. McKinney. The state is under some severe financial pressures. I don't question any of those explanations at all. I would just appreciate it if the water district were not made the scapegoat for issues that were that the groundwater authority was encountering, unless of course we are the scapegoat. But this type of language does not, in my opinion, help a relationship between the water district and the groundwater authority. And that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to public comment.
Judy Decker, I'll talk to you in my position as president of the Eastern Kern County Resource Conservation District. Last month, when I brought this up to you, I brought it up because the RCD had a meeting with some state representatives from various organizations, including the Department of Conservation, but also from UC Extension. And belatedly as it may be, UC Extension is apparently chosen to work on the issue of land fallowing. Fallowing is not really the correct term, because if you talk to a farmer, he'll tell you they fallow their land for a season and replant it with something else and plow it under, then replant again. We're talking permanent here. We're talking the permanent reduction of agricultural used land back to something else. As you all know, this is the desert, and the wind blows. And when the wind blows, there's flying dirt. This will be, take for instance, Meadowbrook and Mojave Pistachios up along North Brown Road. Were that land to cease farming and be plowed under, the dust that would impact the naval base would be severe. We've just spent billions of taxpayer dollars rebuilding it. We need to get together and create a plan to do fallowing. There's other things to do than the things that were suggested, or although the things that were suggested are okay. One of the things that could be done, for instance, is to leave the trees and let them die. Their root systems will hold down the dirt until other plants, native plants, grow. We all can't predict the weather. That could happen in a fairly quick period of time, or it could take a long period of time. But I think it's not something that should be put off onto Stetson to do without meeting with other organizations, groups. The UC Extension folks would be more than happy to come down and talk to us about it, for instance. I don't know what they have planned. I'm going ahead because I think this is a topic that when the GSP was put together, it was mentioned because it's necessary, but it was so far ahead that it hasn't been addressed yet. But it is going to be a serious problem. At the last meeting, it was brought up that Mrs. Simmons had sold her water rights to Mojave Pistachios. My understanding is she sold her water rights and not her land. Is that correct? So there's an example. I don't know how many acres it is, but there is an example of land that is no longer farmed. What is the best thing that we can help the property owner do with it? She has not plowed it, so she's let the weeds grow, and that's good because other things will come up too. As an example.
Judy, could you please bring your comments to a close? There's some other speakers as well.
Okay, but for example, after Hurricane Hillary gave us blessedly 5 inches of rain, we have had baby creosote bushes coming up all over our place. They spread out roots that hold the soil down. And it's things like that we need to come up with a really creative set of plans. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Is there a better term that we should be using other than fallow?
Yes, but I don't know what it is.
Okay. Could you,
I'll see if I can find out.
yeah, and if our engineers could also look to see if there's a more appropriate term, please.
Director, the state term is multi-benefit land repurposing program to fit within the funding. So that is a very long government term, but that is what they call it.
That will double our ink expenditures, but I think we should use that terminology in the future.
So real quick, Joshua Nugent, Mojave Pistachios. A few things. In my mind, there's really two parts of fallowing. One is the environmental impacts of the dust, and the other is the economic impact on the person who's giving up the farming. And so I wonder, can you look at, I think it's called the Readiness and Environmental Protection Initiative through the Navy that allows for some Navy funds to be used if it can either improve the environment or the mission of the base. And so I think that controlling dust on something that's getting abandoned could be a possibility, and it could be as simple as the CBs come out and run some water tanks and, you know, help it during the first couple of years as it transitions out. NRCS, I don't know if there can be different like seeds that can be put together, so farmers could go in and just dry drill seeds in, so then when the raid comes, you could have native stuff grow. And then also on the economic side is solar. There's not a whole lot of really other great economic uses out there, but another thing solar does is they do also take care of the ground itself, so they take care of the dust on their, as part of their management program. And so if there's anything that can be done on the state, federal, county, you know, dog catcher level, any government level where someone could help make this an advantageous solar zone, make the zoning easier, make something more attractive, then that could be a potential thing as a people use maybe some of these government programs to help with the dust control, but then they use private parties through solar or other investment to help kind of monetize the ground in some other way. And then the last thing I'll say is we did have Neal Ranch, which we own, which was the former alfalfa acres that the water district had used in the past, and it had a lot of dust blowing problems. And through a combination of some wet winters, and one year we actually did run some hose across it and just ran a very small amount of water, it was able to start that native growth that's then tied it down over the years. So that's another thing, is just, you know, having a plan for people and some funding for them to transition out, and then an economic out maybe through solar. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, please.
I guess I need some clarification. I kind of want to make a clarification. Michael McKinney, how long has the MLRP program been in place?
Since 2021 was first authorized. I believe it was authorized previously to that. We have been looking at that budget very heavily since fiscal 21 and looking at every year subsequent.
Okay, my point is this report that was put together, I believe, by the GA staff gave the history, and it talked about Resolution 5-20 requires negotiation between the authority and the qualified pumpers and substantial involvement by the water district. That was back in 2020. Had they come to some kind of agreement, maybe they would have had some projects that were shovel-ready. The state had money in 2021 and 2022. It was after 2022 they went into the $30 billion hole because the stock market crashed, as you well know, in 2022. And our state budget, for everybody that needs to know this, is heavily dependent on capital gains that wealthy people pay in the state of California. And when the market crashes, the budget goes way down. The money for the state revenues go way down. So had they started this in August of 2020, they could have gotten some money in 2021 and 2022 for the fallowing program. So I think that cooperation of the water district back then would have been wise and prudent. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Any other public comment?
Can I, so far, I think I'd like to restate,
Hang on
if
one
I
second.
might.
We got one more speaker.
Don Decker. I'm the last standing member of the TAC.
Yep.
What I want to say to you guys is that although we've been talking about the following program and the consequences of basically allowing the property to just drift off into some kind of indeterminate condition where dust becomes a major issue, which here in this basin, it'll be basically a disaster. What I want to say is that it's not just here, however. The dust problems in the Central Valley are ongoing every springtime. And this is a problem that is statewide that we're talking about. And the fact that it's been just ignored is a very poor start on what is it'll turn out to be a terrible problem, not just here, as I just mentioned. I think that there needs to be some absolutely directed effort from this board put to the solution. The idea of perhaps solar projects is a possibility, except that solar has been so oversold that people don't realize that those projects that they're looking at will be dead in 20 years, dead. And so that's not a permanent solution either. And a lot of the solar fields, for example, down in the Cantil area, are sources of dust. All you have to do is go down there on a day of 30 miles an hour and you can't even see them hardly. So I think that's all I'm going to tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Decker. Any other public speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for any questions or comments.
I think if I understood correctly, that people are saying that as part of the dust mitigation program, they're desiring that a full and thorough study of the alternates be done. Mr. McKinney, is there a plan for or a determination as to what is the best dust mitigation effort?
There is not a particular preferred dust mitigation requirement. It is one element but it has to be one of several elements as part of a land reuse. I think the challenge that the authority has faced and the region has faced since 2020 is the lack of an identifiable project. In order to even look at what might be within the realm of the possible, we sort of have to know what piece of land might be fallowed, how many acres that land is, and then put together a plan with that landowner that would be acceptable. And to date, as many times as we have brought this up with the board and with Stetson, it has always come back to Capital Corps that there is not an identified project at this particular point. Now, we've reported that there was no available money in the years where there were no available funds. The small amount of funding that was provided to UC for studies and to the Department of Conservation to begin restarting this program in the last fiscal year is hopefully going to be expanded in the next fiscal year. But once again, Capital Corps will ask the question to the staff, identify a project. And until that project is identified, we're going to have a hard time going to policymakers or regulators and saying, please give us money.
All right, very good. You have clearly demonstrated a deep understanding of what's necessary, and I appreciate that. What I really would like is if I believe that you will do this, but for the assurance of those who have spoken out, You will, of course, alleviate their concerns if you would acknowledge that you will undertake, as I know you will, to find the best and most appropriate mitigation effort for the dust.
Yes, sir, it is. It will be in our fiscal year 2026 work plan, which we already are reviewing at a staff level. It is item number 3A, to be very specific, as you guys look at it next month.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, the staff recommendation is that the board provide direction on whether to contact transient pool members to determine interest in implementing dust control measures if funding were available, and if there's interest to pursue funding for the dust control mitigation program. So is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Chairman Peters,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blades,
Aye.
Director St. Amand,
Yes.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
May I make a comment, Mr. Peters?
Sure, if you could just be brief, we've already finished that item.
Yes, I would like to thank Stetson Engineers who took my suggestion last month, contacted our AO, and then contacted the people that she gave them, she gave him information about. And Josh is right, the NRCS does have a seed program whereby they provide native seeds for a given area to start the reseeding program. But that is also kind of a tentative thing in this area because of our rainfall erratic behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is agenda item number 15. That's the Water Resource Manager's Report.
Yeah, this is Steve again. Thank you, Chairman Peters and the board and all the stakeholders. Thanks for those comments, Judy. I just mentioned right at the start is we 100% always have appreciated comments from the locals, including from Mojave Pistachio folks. I mean, these are folks that are there, and we take everything they say. It's important stuff. So I'll keep this short. There is a written report, so there's no reason to go into a bunch of detail. I think money's important, so I will give you just a quick hit on the grant funding status for the implementation grant, the round one implementation grant. Invoice number 12, which covered through June, April through June, was for almost $420,000. Has been submitted to DWR. Generally, we've got approval. We're just awaiting payment for that, so we have $420,000 waiting for delivery to the Groundwater Authority. Invoice 13 is from July to September, due into November, so we'll have that ready to go. It'll be submitted on time. The Urban Community Drought Relief Program, where we're working on the Rademacher extension and on a phase 2 through the Stark Street, and also a review of the plan and approach schedule to use up all of these funds. It's about $3.4 million. We've got to make sure that we've got an effective plan to use up all of these funds, and we'll be bringing that. It'll be internal to staff, and it'll come to the board as a plan. Under the program, invoice number 6, April through June of this year, almost $175,000. They approved it, and we have received payment, so that money's here. Invoice number 7, same situation, July through September, due by the end of November. We'll be ready to go on that. Bianca did walk through. She saved me some reports. She walked through the resiliency grant and where we're at, and the fact that this has taken some time. As you recall, change of administration required us to redo some of the language in the grant agreement and in the grant application. That's all been done. Bianca did report that we have exchanged draft agreements, grant agreements with DWR. We've agreed with all of the provisions, so it is in their hands. I will just say that, and maybe it'll end today. I don't know how fast it'll go after that, but the government shutdown, the federal shutdown, we believe, I'm sure it has slowed this process down a bit. We're still expecting these funds, and we're still have these funds in our budget, as Bianca described earlier. For the imported water pipeline project, there's a pretty detailed summary of design, environmental, and right-of-way here. I will tell you that a lot is expected to be done by the end of this year. We expect to get a lot done. The grant itself that we're using for this project, we have to write a project completion report by March 31st of next year. We may be discussing an extension. We'll see about that, but we're coming to a closure on that grant agreement. Well, I do have in the report a summary of Blue Mountain and Omar's report. Omar provided their report. I won't go over that. It's in the report. Submittals to DWR. We provide a list of what those submittals are. Again, a lot going to be submitted by the end of the year. We have a lot of work to do to meet these deadlines, and our intent is certainly to do that. We do provide some information on shallow well mitigation program. We have no applications right now that we are reviewing. Information on data collection, subflow from Rose Valley. We're working on reimbursement from the monitoring well that we did drill up there, so we're still working on the reimbursement. And I think that's it. I've tried to move it along. It's been a long meeting, but I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Just one moment. You know, while we're waiting, is there anybody from the public who has a question?
Yes. Judy Decker again. I noted in your report, Steve, that you did the fall well monitoring collection. Have you posted that data on the website yet?
Gosh, that's a good question. I've got Helena and Bianca on phone. Do you guys know if that's been posted yet? We have a different group that does that. I can find out, but I don't know right now. Bianca or Helena, do you know?
Hi, Steve. I do not believe they've been posted yet, but I'll have to double check.
Okay.
Okay, but will you post it, please?
Yes.
Yes, we can certainly do that soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay, any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the board. Any other final questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Steve and Bianca.
Yeah.
We'll go to General Manager's report, item 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet, you have your financial reports, financial statements. As I mentioned last month, we're doing a month in arrears as from what we would normally do. So this is for the year January through September. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer them. Outreach,
I do have a quick question, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
You mentioned a couple of board meetings ago that the audit for 2024, we could expect that by the end of this year, calendar year. Are we still on track for the audit by December?
That is my understanding.
Thank you.
Okay. Outreach, I'm happy to report that in speaking to the folks at Westbound, they are getting ready to totally switch over on our website. They are preparing a variety of fact sheets and FAQs for the website. So, and they've been using the PAC's recommendations to develop materials that we're going to be using for the website as well. So they tell me that fairly soon we should be seeing the transition over to the new website. So that's going to be exciting to see. And last item is the Capital Core report. Michael, I'm thinking you probably don't have anything left to report. It's a pretty brief one in the packet there at the end anyway, but I'll turn it over to you.
I have a couple of questions about outreach first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So we had the erroneous press release that was sent out on October 21st. Who authorized the text of the release?
Who authorized?
The content of the release.
Can we, just for understanding, what Which press release are we talking about? This is the first time I'm hearing about something.
Oh, there was a press release sent out on October 21st that announced a signed deal between the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority and Searles Valley Minerals, and it has since been retracted by the paper as at the request of the Groundwater Authority as being, I think what the word was used was prematurely released.
I'm going to ask staff not to engage on this topic. This relates directly to litigation which is ongoing and for which your host entity is on the opposite side. And I would caution staff not to reveal any attorney-client information.
All right, so if I asked, I'm going to ask another question anyway. If it was retracted, why is it, at least as of yesterday, Monday, why is it still posted on the Facebook page and the website for the Groundwater Authority?
We didn't retract it.
So you stand by you say it was just premature. It was removed from the paper as premature. If it was premature in the paper, then you're saying it wasn't premature on the Facebook page or the website.
I didn't make any of those comments.
Okay, so if it was retracted in the paper, why has it not been retracted on the Facebook page and the website?
I don't think we retracted it on the paper. I don't know what that means, retracted it on the paper.
Well, what was the quote from the paper? Does anybody have that handy?
Okay, Renee Westerlusk. This is my paper that I get every Friday. So the title of the article is IWVGA Settlement Press Release Sent in Air. And then the first paragraph reads, a press release from Westbound Communications on behalf of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority announcing a settlement between IWVGA and Searles Valley Minerals was sent in air. No such agreement has yet been signed. And then the second paragraph says, the release sent out October 22nd stated that the two sides had agreed to end their separate lawsuits against each other and that Searles Valley Mineral and the city of Ridgecrest would work to develop a project that allows Searles Valley Mineral to use up a 2,000 acre feet a year of recycled water for industrial operations rather than using drinking water pumped from the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin. But according to sources within the IWVGA, the public relations firm sent the release too soon. As of October 30th, there was still no signed agreement. The Daily Independent apologized to its readers and advertisers for the erroneous story.
Care to comment, Mr. Lemieux?
The story doesn't say that we retracted the story.
Okay, that's nice. Do you care to say anything other than that?
No.
Keith, this is John Vallejo. I'm comfortable with you not responding to that question on behalf of the Groundwater Authority.
I can ask him questions, can't I? Thank you.
That's really funny for somebody that always claims everybody else is being rude. Pretty par for the course. Anyways, would you like to continue, Carol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with regard to the outreach report, I think we covered that. The last item was the Capital Corps report, and I was going to ask Michael McKinney if he had anything more to add, because I know we've covered a lot of his information already.
Nothing to add to that other than we are back in business in Washington, D.C., and I will be looking forward to returning to Capitol Hill as soon as I get over this little upper respiratory infection that I have, and we're getting back to work.
So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carol. Any
Does that-
other?
Just a question, Michael, does that mean that the government's open again?
We have a vote to open the government. It is subject to the president signing the final legislation, which we believe he will do so.
Ooh, thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, that takes us to item 17. The date of our next meeting is December 10th, 2025, and with that, we're adjourned.